Hello, welcome to
Hi.
Cranked and Ranked. Yes, another episode of Cranked and Ranked, and if you're paying attention, yes, this is the second of our Primus discography ranking. And for those of you who are new, welcome. Cranked and Ranked is a show where we rank rock and metal and other music-related shits, usually bands' discographies. And today is the second half of us doing Primus. We're doing the top 5 Primus albums. And as usual, here to guide you on this journey is me, Steven, or Old Head. With me as always, Eddie Sparxx. Hello.
Yo.
Hey. We spoke a little bit about this before we started this episode where we were talking about how difficult it was to rank this bottom or top half, these 5 albums, because they could kind of go in any order. There are really strong qualities about all 5 of the albums that are in my top 5, to the point where I kept going back and saying, is this right? Should I move this? And finally, at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? Nobody's grading me on this. So I'm just going to leave it with what my gut tells me is the correct ranking, because somebody else commented on the last episode, and their ranking was very different, to where they had the Brown album up higher. I'm like, well, I guess that's the kind of band that Primus is. They're a band that you connect with what you connect with, and none of it's bad, but it's each fan, I think, kind of has their own thing they connect with, and it's interesting. But the way that things, smoothed out for our ranking, we're actually both ranking the first 5 releases in whatever order we decide to rank them in, which is, I would call those like the original classic run of the original trio of dudes that started, from Suck on This all the way through Tales from the Punch Bowl. And then, because after that, there was a little bit of, I guess it was just drummers for the most part. That was a little bit of an in and out, as they say. Anyway, so forgive me if I'm a little bit slow today. I was up celebrating 10,000 subscribers last night, drinking with the Barbecutioner from Chromium Dioxide. And for those of you who saw that live stream, if you haven't, go check it out. It's on my YouTube page. But for those of you who were there, you're probably wondering, how did Steven even get up and do anything else? Because I was not anywhere near as drunk as Phil was, Philip. But in trying to catch up with them at the end, once we ended the thing, I was on my 7th beer, and I'm just like, woo, okay. Because I don't normally drink like that. I'll drink a few beers. I'll toss a few back here and there. But that amount that quickly, I'm usually like, no, I don't. I need to pace myself. I'm an old man. I can't. Well, I guess he's an old man too. But he partied hard. He partied like he was in Motley Crue. Last night.
Yeah, that's the thing. I look like I could keep up with the guys in Motley Crue. I fucking hate hangovers so much. I love to drink.
Yeah.
But it's the day after that I'm like, oh,
yeah,
God,
that's
what
why
have I done. Yeah.
I wouldn't have been a good rock star, because there has to be a scheduled nap. So I would be bugging the other dudes like, hey, Tommy, Vince, when do we nap? When's nap time?
Yeah.
Because sorry, I can't just keep doing this. There's got to be a time where we take a little nap. Even if you want to do it surrounded by scantily clad women.
No nap, only pussy.
Anyway, that's a very different world from what we're talking about because,
Yeah.
by all accounts, Primus were not rock stars and are not rock stars. I mean, you know, they're famous in their own right, but I'm pretty sure, and I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that Les Claypool never had like groupies backstage with him at any point.
I don't know, man.
Like that kind of guy.
Like, I just feel like at least at like one of every show there was probably like one alternative girl there with dreadlocks that just fucking got him. Like, you know, she was just like, yeah, Jerry was a race car driver and he drove so goddamn fast.
Wow. Maybe so. Maybe he did get a little bit of action. I don't know. I gotta eventually dig into the Primus book that I bought, and maybe it'll have a little bit of that. I don't know. Maybe there was some debauchery on the road, but probably nowhere near the Motley Crue level. And so Primus, the top 5 Primus albums according to us. So let's just jump right into it, because if this is anything like the last episode, there'll be some tangents that'll pop up along the way, and we're just gonna let them happen, because that's how we roll. So let's start off as usual, throwing it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx to start us off with his number 5 Primus album.
Okay, so my number 5 Primus album is Tales from the Punch Bowl.
Okay, 1995.
So this is the last of like the original run of Primus records, in the first run to feature Tim Alexander on drums.
Yeah.
And I mean, the dude's a fucking beast, and he is incredible on this album, as he is on all of them. I think this is the first one where things began to splinter within the band, though. They were starting to have a few creative differences around this time. But it doesn't affect the musicianship whatsoever, because there's some awesome shit here. So, without further ado, Professor Nutbutter's House of Treats is anxiety in song form. Like, I was driving to work when I was listening to this song, and I thought, fucking hell, I love this, but should I be driving a car right now? Like the I'm thinking, shit, am I in control of this car? And that's like a 7-8 minute song too. But yeah, awesome. Mrs. Blayleen, catchy but kind of understated, a little bit more vibey, but still has a little bit of a oomph to it. Winona's Big Brown Beaver is one of the best songs of all time. Like, super good song, really fun sing-along, iconic video. It has it all.
And their really most successful single they ever put out. That was the most successful single. I don't know about over in the UK, but in America, it's weird. It became a thing. Like, you saw it on MTV a lot. I guess you also saw My Name Is Mud quite a bit when that came out. But it seemed like the Winona video, like, it caught on in like a really strange way. And I think I said this last time. Yeah, but I think that's why I said last time that's why the 90s were awesome, because like something like that would be like a hit song. And I miss that. I really miss that.
I will say, like, something that becomes really clear in this discography is that the songwriting of, you know, Les Claypool and Primus, you know, there's so many characters in this band, like, that they tell the story of. Like, there's so many songs that have someone's name in them, you know, like Professor Nutbutter, Mrs. Blayleen, Winona's Big Brown Beaver. Like, that's 3 songs in a row that have like names in them. There's one on Pork Soda literally called My Name Is Mud. There's Jerry Was a Race Car Driver, Tommy the Cat, John the Fisherman. Like, I do have to say, it doesn't bother me, but a little nitpick that I can make about Les Claypool is that he really loves
the Devil Went Down to Georgia style vocals.
Yeah.
Because he does the whole like, like he does that a lot. And I know it was probably done before Devil Went Down to Georgia, but that's what it makes me think of every time.
Yeah.
He does that quite a bit. Like not to the point where I feel like he's phoning it in, but he really does like that style. No. I guess it goes good for like a storytelling time, if you're gonna have those kind of lyrics.
I mean, there's like so many elements to Primus that shouldn't work but do. Like you've got fucking prog metal drums. You've got funk bass with like kind of power chord kind of stuff thrown in there. You've got whacked out psychedelic, should sound wrong, but for some reason works guitars. And then over the top of it all, you've got Les Claypool doing his Devil Went Down to Georgia vocal style over the top. And it's like how did these wonderful planets align and just make this awesome thing? But yeah, Southbound Pachyderm is a really cool, like, moody track.
Yeah, it's got a good vibe, like real sort of creepy vibe, real mellow, but cool.
Southbound Pachyderm. Yeah. Space Farm sounds exactly how the title
sounds like a space farm.
Yeah. Year of the Parrot is batshit insane, but super groovy. That could be said for their whole discography. Yeah. Hellbound 17 and a half, theme from. One of my favorite song titles I think I've ever read on this show. Glass Sandwich is this like spooky waltzy track. You've got a really cool beat to it, like like how do they come up with this shit? It's so good.
Yeah.
Del Davis Tree Farm. There's a part at the end of this song I can only describe as jolly funk. Like, it's just delightful. Yeah. Now, here's one that I inexplicably really took to. What is it? Dianza Jig. I can't remember who said it in the conversation. It could have been me, to be honest. But I remember talking to a couple of friends of mine about Primus, and the term redneck prog came up in a conversation, and that's always just stuck with me. But I love the I love the like bass line in this song, like like it just puts me in a good mood. On the Tweak again, there's just something about the bass drum in Primus that's so satisfying. There's always a really good thud to it.
Yeah.
Oh God, Over the Electric Grapevine is like one of their more trippy psychedelic journeys of a song. Captain Shiner is kind of a callback to Dianza Jig, and I like it, but it's one of the best sounding Primus albums, but it's also got parts that are more memorable than others, and I think of the first four studio releases, it's probably the least memorable, but it's still super enjoyable. So yeah.
I agree, and we were already starting off neck and neck because that's my number 5 also, Tales from the Punch Bowl. I agree with a lot about what you said. I really like this album. I have to admit, like when this album came out and I first bought it, it took several listens for me. Because I think the first few songs, there's things about them that immediately grab you, but the ones later on took a little bit for them to grow on me. And I ended up really liking this album, but it was the first Primus album I had heard that there wasn't an immediate thing where I'm like, oh, this album's awesome. It was like, do I really like this? I'm not sure. But, in the end, I did. But those areas of the album, like I'm talking about in the later half, the best word I can use is that when they get a little bit too meandering, like there really doesn't seem to be a purpose. I don't enjoy it as much although like I have to say, like in the initial run of their albums, like this one ends up in the top half of the countdown because I love the fact that they clearly progressed up to a point where Tales from the Punch Bowl, they're pushing things to like the oddest extremes possible. And so they can't really do like the heavy funk thing. They've done that. So I get that. And so on this one, they kind of lean on the odd side of things a little bit more. And it still sounds like Primus, but it's just, I guess I hate using the word progressive or psychedelic with them because I almost feel like it sells them short. But there's elements of those together, the proggy and the psychedelic, but it's done in a Primus way, and which is unlike anybody else's progressive or psychedelic. But yeah, I like how odd the album is, and at the same time, it also has the most successful single they ever released. So that's kind of interesting about this album. But honestly, like this album at the time, it because it didn't hit me as hard as I had hoped. That's why my Primus story kind of ended there for a long time, because I was just like, all right, well, I'm not feeling it really. It was fine, but I'm not going back to listen to this album a lot. Which is the same thing today. I don't listen to this album very much, but when I do put it on, like you said, it's probably the best sounding, like production wise, Primus album. And there's a lot of great shit on it. But if I'm going to grab a Primus album, it's going to be one of the 4 that are going to be following this one. So yeah, while it's still a fucking great album, Tales had to come in at number 5 for me as well. So let's move on to number 4.
Cool. So my number 4 is Suck on This.
Awesome.
So this is their debut, but it's also a live album. So it's not a studio kind of affair. And it's also 1989. So that's still in the 80s. This is early days.
There's nothing about it that sounds 80s. They were already in the future.
These guys live in their own fucking universe, dude.
Yeah,
like
totally different timeline, the Primus timeline.
I didn't do like a full track by track for this one, seeing as tracks from this one appear as studio versions later on. But you get the Heckler. That didn't appear as a studio version until Antipop, and even then it's a hidden track. But everybody say, Larry, you're a bastard. Larry, you're a bastard. Do you like it? Tim Alexander is a fucking beast again. Like, his grooves and fills are among the tastiest I've ever heard. And I came to realize recently as to like how subliminally influenced I am, like drum fill wise, I am by Tim Alexander. I will raise my hand and say I'm nowhere near as good as Tim Alexander, but there's a lot of stuff that he does that I think, ooh, I want to use that, and I like. There's not too many drummers that make me really go, fuck, dude, but he's one of those. He's one of the select few. But yeah, Tommy the Cat is already an immensely complex song, and to think that it got as fast as it did on Sailing the Seas of Cheese is mental, because even here it's still an impressive live performance, albeit slower. Yeah. But and the rest is just a fucking awesome Primus live set. And it really captures a young, hungry band doing absolutely insane shit. So, yeah.
Agreed. I'm now wondering if we're going to be matching up all the way down, because my number 4 is also Suck on This. And I agree with everything you say. First of all, I love the fact that their debut album was a live album. But the one thing that I want to say about this is that Live albums up to a certain point, like I put them on and they sound great. And then something happened with live albums. I don't know if you've noticed this, but like live albums that get released like 90s and beyond have some awful sound on them. And like there's I can't think of a modern live album that I heard and went, yeah, that sounds fucking great. I'd rather listen to this than the studio versions. Like that doesn't. It's, I'm talking about not when you're not watching the band, when you're just listening to a live album. But then you go back to 1989. These dudes didn't have a record deal. They just recorded it on some equipment that they had.
Yeah.
And it sounds great. Like the energy to it is fucking great. And I'm like, well, why is it so hard to replicate that kind of thing nowadays? Because it's I don't know what it is. So this album has always been special to me because I'm always amazed at just like, it doesn't matter that it's a live album. But on top of that, the fact that it's live and the fact that you hear some crowd interaction and stuff, it actually is the perfect debut for Primus because the energy that they have live and the energy they have connecting with the audience is like part of the thing that makes them great. And it's just I mean, I don't think that every band should do a live album for the first album, but it really does, like, it cuts to the chase about how, you can clearly hear how great our songs are, but you can also hear that we're a great live band, just getting all that out of the way in one album. Don't need to worry about that. So you didn't hear a really well-produced, slick debut album and you're wondering if we can pull it off live. Maybe that was part of it. It's like, people are like, Les, nobody's going to believe that you can play this stuff. Well, then we'll put out a live album first. I mean, I know that probably wasn't the thinking, but still, it sounds great. Hey, look, there's video now, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
When I said that I was out of it today, I was serious, and and so I didn't realize that we weren't recording the Zoom call. And so if you made it through the first like half hour or so with just some old school style, look at this album cover type shit, then thank you. But now you've regularly scheduled programming, hopefully with no more glitches. Although I hear that I'm lagging a little bit, but Eddie's fine. He's everything's perfect on his end. So shit. Anyway, so we were talking about Suck on This, and I don't really have a lot to add apart from what you were saying about Suck on This. It's a really great album. I ended up putting it number 4, even though I really enjoy this, because I was a little bit iffy on, do I like the presentation of the songs here or the recorded versions on Frizzle Fry more? And I literally had to go and listen to them back to back, some of the tracks. And I'm all like, at the end of the day, I actually really do like the studio recordings of them. So while I think this is a cool beginning to the band and everything, and an amazing live album, on its own, I just think that they did better, like studio versions of what they did beat this album out for sure. So it ends up being also my number 4. Now this is going to be interesting. We may like diverge from each other, but I think this is going to be the telling point. The number 3. If we don't match up on number 3, or if we do match up on number 3, then I have a feeling we're going to match up the entire rest of the way. That's just my prediction. So what is your number 3 Primus album, Eddie?
I want to preface this by saying my top 3, they're on an equal playing field. I love each of these 3 equally.
Yeah, I agree.
They're a trilogy of masterpieces. But my number 3 is Frizzle Fry.
Okay, well, I'm not going to say anything right now. Just go into your Frizzle Fry.
Now, I think of the 3, I think this one definitely has probably, if you would like to call it the most metal sound Primus probably did, because there's some very aggressive guitar moments on here, and
maybe between this one and Antipop, but yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
yeah, like coming straight in with To Defy the Laws of Tradition, that is a nasty, groovy, heavy song.
Oh yeah.
Love the, suppose the taxman he comes to town, like all of the rhythms and stuff. Super cool song. Great way to, blast through the wall and say, hey, we're Primus. We suck. But they fucking rule.
Yeah.
But don't
But
tell the
they
fans
suck.
that I'm supposed to say they suck. They suck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Primus sucks, guys. But
it's a really confusing thing to people that aren't fans, because they'd be like, "Why are you being such a dick?"
Yeah. Oh man, and then immediately followed up with Groundhog's Day. Like, this one's a slow burner that absolutely kicks off halfway through. Like, it's a deceptive song where it's kind of like, this one's kind of more chill. Psych.
Yeah.
Too Many Puppies, Ride Simple Goodness, and just thumping riffage in this one.
The thump of that song is too fucking good, man. I love
it. Too many puppies. My favorite part. Which part is it? Too many puppies.
Yeah.
Like, I love that.
Too
part
many
too.
puppies.
Oh, please. Oh, see, this album's a great time, and Mr. Know-It-All. This song rules. So goddamn good. This one has an almost Faith No More feel at times. It kind of reminds me of the song R&R. With the kind of guitar parts in it, and then obviously in the Faith No More song. But there's a very Mike Bording kind of drum beat in this one, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Frizzle Fry, fuck me, the groove in this song, the bass line in it is sick. I love the kind of, Arabian kind of things coming in here and there. You got John the Fisherman, absolute classic. And I love the fact that Kirk Hammett appears in the music video on the Fishing Book.
Yep.
He doesn't stand out as Kirk Hammett, but you do see him if you kind of like squint and, oh shit, it's Kirk Hammett.
Yeah.
You Can't Kill Michael Malloy is this kind of waltzy interlude. And then the toys go winding down. It gives you a false sense of security at the start. Don't know what happened with the word there. I had a malfunction.
That's a bit of a tongue twister. False sense of security. It's a lot of S's is in there.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably end up putting this through a de-esser, and then you can't hear that shit. But, yeah, it's got like a whimsical acoustic thing going on before just slamming into one of the album's heaviest moments with that. Like,
that's a really that riff is pretty dark for Primus. Like, just it sounds very dark, because a lot of their stuff doesn't really get that dark. But I've always thought that bass riff, I'm like, it sounds pretty dark.
It wouldn't be out of place on a thrash album, straight up. Like, you could have it'd be fucking awesome. But it's just as awesome when Primus does it. Put in Time. This is a case of, what the fuck? I love it. There's so many moments in this that I think, there's so much going on, but it's amazing. It's like this hell ride. Southington Willoughby is another fun short one. Spaghetti Western, crazy heavy vibe thing meets slam poetry. Harold of the Rocks is this kind of funky rockin' one. To Defy is this warped, fucked up callback to the opener. And then on certain versions, you get a cover of the Residents songs, Hello Skinny Constantinople, which is cool too. All in all, fucking awesome, heavy, funky Primus album. Love it. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it seems like that this is because I feel like that there are like there's many different types of Primus fans, but I feel like there's a definite two sides where there are the people that enjoy the heavier side of Primus and people that enjoy the quirkier, maybe not as metallic side of Primus. And so I could understand why some people would be like, suck on this. I mean, not suck on this. Frizzle Fry is like not one of their best albums because they got better. And you can say technically they got better, which they did get better.
Yeah.
But I love this album, and it is not my number 3. This was rough, but I agree with you. All 3 of these albums could all just be number 1. I kept going back to check and be like, should I move this? And so it was difficult for me, but my number 3 had to go to Pork Soda from 1993, which, I mean, I can't. It's really tough because I'm like, oh, this is number 3, but there's so much good shit on this album, and it was like the first time that that Primus hit like the top 10 in the Billboard charts, like they were in the top 10. A band that put out an album like Pork Soda is it not top 10 rock charts, top 10 all across the board. Like they're up there with the likes of Mariah Carey or whoever, like and that just makes me that makes me happy because it's already a big deal if you even break the Billboard 200. But if you're in the top 10, Jesus fucking Christ. And so once again, the 90s were awesome. And they brought us an album like Pork Soda, which, going from, it's a further progression of their sound, going from Frizzle Fry to Seas of Cheese to Pork Soda. Like, they literally kept one-upping themselves in some way with what they were doing. And I love how that Pork Soda is a really good combination of their showers and their growers. So they're the songs that hit you immediately, and then the other ones that become really awesome the more that you listen to them. And this particular album is the one where when I put it at number 3 and I settled on it, I was like, this could easily be somebody's number 1, because you could say that it's the quintessential Primus album because all of the elements. I almost feel like this is probably the absolute best starting point for anyone wanting to listen to Primus, because you've got all the different flavors of Primus from the couple albums prior, and you get a big glimpse in where they end up going. So I almost feel like listen to Pork Soda. If you like this album, chances are you're gonna like everything, because it's just right there. It's got all the things. So in that respect, it should be number 1. But the only reason I moved it here is because I'm like, there are a couple songs that maybe drag a little bit, but that's nitpicking because it's a really, really, really good album, and it was a big deal when it came out because I was already a fucking Primus fan, and then you see the video for My Name Is Mud, and you're just like, fuck, man, this is awesome. But that was another really weird video to all of a sudden see coming on MTV just like during the day, because because most people like us headbangers and metalheads and whatnots, a lot of our shit got played at night on Headbangers Ball or something else. But you started to see My Name Is Mud just randomly during the day. It's just like, that is a really weird song to just be throwing out there. But at the same time, like that's so awesome, because I can imagine like the number of fans that ended up getting into Primus who never would have known that band even existed. And maybe for those people, Primus was that band, with the first time you hear a distorted guitar or some heavy part of some song, whatever it is that unlocks that thing where you go, oh, I want to get into this music. Like, imagine that there had to have been kids that heard My Name Is Mud and went, there's music like this out there now.
Yeah.
The disappointing part is they find out that there's not a lot of music like this out there. But it definitely opened the doors for them to experience more. And so once again, the 90s were fucking awesome, and I loved that sort of shit happened. And this album's great. I honestly, like, I'm on the fence about whether or not this one or Tales is the better sounding, because Pork Soda sounds great.
Yeah.
Because while my top two albums overall I think are better albums, production wise is where I have my little gripes. But I feel like they finally nailed it with Pork Soda. And I don't know who. I think it was produced by Primus, but they had obviously, like, the engineers, studio engineers or whatever. So whatever it was, they figured out how to capture this weird combination where the bass is the primary instrument, which is, like, how many bands are like that, or the bass guitar is louder than the electric guitar? Because usually it's the bass guitar is just layered right underneath the electric guitars, but Primus, it's the other way around. And anyway, Pork Soda is a really great album. We'll talk about it more because you haven't talked about it yet, but it ended up being my number 3. So moving on, our top 2 Primus albums.
Cool. So that's a good jumping off point because my number 2 is Pork Soda. And for a long time, it was my go-to Primus album because, like you said, it had kind of the best of both worlds. It has the heavy moments and it has the weird, crazy shit going on too.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna dive right into the tracks. Pork Chop's little ditty is a short little mandolin ditty, which immediately like cuts right into "My name is Bud."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that bass line is probably my favorite Primus riff. Like, it's so weirdly rhythmic, like, but it's also so simple. But I've never been able to figure out like how many times he's hitting it. It's like,
yeah.
And even when it goes like really low, I'm just thinking, how the fuck is this one of the heaviest things I've ever heard? Like, I'm listening to it, and there are metal bands that don't elicit the riff face that I get out of this song. I just hear it and I'm like,
yeah,
fuck, dude. Like, and then the Larry Lalonde's guitars come in, and they're like, in what world but Primus does it work?
Yeah.
Like, I'm blown away to this day by this song. Welcome to This World, absolutely crazy song. There's going to be a lot of me imitating parts on this album. Yeah. Absolutely insane. Bob. Now this is a dark song, like lyrically and in sound. Super cool parts, especially the burning kind of stuff. And obviously the main hook in it is, I had a friend that had a belt, took the belt and hung himself in the doorway of the apartment where he lived.
Yeah.
And it's so much of this album feels like this. I don't want it to sound like I'm giving it a disservice, but it sounds like a comedy horror movie. Like, so many parts on here, I'm like, I feel uneasy, but I love it. DMV, also one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Super fun song, great bass line, great groove. Old Diamondback Sturgeon, Fisherman Chronicles, Chapter 3. Really cool, chill song. Nature Boy gradually gets more and more intense and picks up speed. Wounded Knee is this percussion interlude, quite cool. Pork Soda, love the chorus on this one.
Yeah.
Grab yourself a cup of port soda. You'll feel just fine.
At the end of this, I'll do a supercut of all of the mouth bass and other things that you're doing. By the way, did you see the ending of our last episode and what I threw together?
I haven't yet. I still need to catch up.
If in case any of you haven't, at the very end of it, I do a loop of your later dude, and it makes me laugh every time I watch it. So yeah, go if any of you haven't, if any of you didn't stay past the end credits, there was an extra scene, and go check it out. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm going to be watching that right after this episode. Well, where was I? Where was I, boy? Oh, I got myself the Pressman, which is a vibey track.
Old track. Crinkle, that's on Stuck on This, Pressman.
It is, and it finally gets a studio recording 4 years on. Mm-hmm. Mr. Crinkle, insane song, insane video, and I believe the song's title is inspired by Mike Borden from Faith No More.
Oh, okay.
I've heard somewhere, I could be wrong, but Mr. Crinkle was the alter ego of Mike Borden whenever he'd check into a hotel or something like that. It's just something funny. I mean, it could be an urban legend or not, but I think I've heard that somewhere. But I love the video to that one. Like, the pig mask, the cello, everything going crazy, and it's all in one take.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's another thing that I miss is that how inventive music videos were for a little while in the 90s also. I mean, there's still perfectly fine music videos done now, but it doesn't have the same charm that it did then because the technology wasn't all, digital technology wasn't all crazy yet. So there were so many videos where they had to come up with camera tricks and other, little shortcuts to make something work. But I don't know if you remember this. I mean, you don't because you weren't there, but I don't know if you know about this, but on MTV, starting at about maybe 91 or 92, like the music video game got so big that at the very beginning of a music video, it would be a little credit that popped up at the bottom, and it would say, here's the band, here's the song, here's the album that it's from. They started including the director of the video's name in the first credit that popped up, because
I've seen that. Yeah. Like on old Headbangers Ball footage, I've seen that. Yeah.
And because it became such a big deal of like, well, who did this fucking video? And that's fucking awesome. And some of those people, like we talked about with the Billy Idol one, the Cradle of Love video, that dude went off to be a great director. And then I think, other big ass directors did music videos, and a video like Mr. Crinkle just reminds me of that time period where it was like when somebody had a new music video. And when I say somebody, I usually mean like, unfortunately, usually I mean a rock band, because I feel like in the areas of hip hop and pop music, there normally wasn't that big of a push to do anything unique. But so when rock bands would bring out new videos, it was always kind of like, oh, I wonder what the fuck they're going to do this time. And so I just, it's a little aside, a little tangent about music videos, but the Mr. Crinkle one is great. And I just, we're never going to get back there, folks. It's never going to happen again. So that's why I'll just go back and watch my old Headbangers Ball episodes and just remember back when music videos were exciting. And MTV played music. Hey, back then. Yeah. Anyway, where were we on here? Yeah.
I've got The Air Is Getting Slippery. I don't know how to describe this one, but I love it. It's awfully hot in here today, incredibly hot in here. Hamburger Train. Oh man. And then you get Hamburger Train, which is this 8-minute slap fest, which is gnarly. Then you get pork chops.
Do you know where the sample from the beginning of Hamburger Train comes from? The guy
from the
from the
hamburger
Hamburger Train, right? So one, do you know who that is? Two, do you know what it's from?
I may end up kicking myself. What's it from?
It's from a movie called Cheech and Chong's Nice Dreams.
Oh,
but
fuck.
It's not Cheech and Chong. It's Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, that says that line. There's a really weird scene where like I'm thinking it's like there's a whole lot of drugs, not just weed, in Nice Dreams. And if I remember right, like Paul Rubens is doing like, "You're the guy from the Hamburger Train," right? Like he's doing that. Anyway, a little tidbit. It's
been a long ass time since I've seen Cheech and Chong. I need to watch those. Oh, I need to watch those again.
First few fun movies. I mean, Up in Smoke's a classic, but there's some pre. Well, I don't know. I guess he was already doing Pee Wee Herman at that point because he did that pretty early, Paul Rubens. But it was pre Pee Wee's Playhouse anyway. Like I don't think that was a thing yet. He wasn't a. Anyway, this is not the Pee Wee Herman ranking. This is the. But what better band would it be to like lead us to Pee Wee Herman than
Hell yeah. I expected nothing less. So then we get Pork Chop's Little Ditty again, which is a slightly longer ditty than the opener. Mm-hmm. And then you get Hail Santa, which is this kind of creepy track. And like this is like probably the most atmospheric of the first three. Mm-hmm. Because it relies as much on vibe as it does songs. Like you say, it's got both kind of worlds that Primus kind of inhabit. But, it's a killer album. But when I went through and listened to the albums again, I was kind of like, I don't know if it is my number one. And hell, next week it could be. And then the week after that, it could be Frizzle Fry. It's super hard. This is one of the hardest rankings I've ever done. But
I agree with that. My number two, I had a pretty clear number one, even though I second guessed myself several times. But I stayed with how I felt in the beginning, and so my number two ended up being Frizzle Fry from 1990. Their debut studio album. And I mean, it's the rawest and noisiest album that they put out. Maybe if you want to throw, Brown Album into that, but I just call that poor production choices, but I mean, that's a different, to each their own. Some people are okay with that. The amazing thing to me about this, and you could say the same about Suck on This and Frizzle Fry, the fact that I know that Primus existed in different forms prior to this trio, but the fact that from album number one, there was such a clear style from the beginning. Yeah. And the fact that it was a style that I don't think anyone else had ever done. So the fact that they had this unique take on the music that they were making, it was already ready to go. Album number one. And that's just amazing to me. And the fact that you listen to Frizzle Fry, and it's hard now because we've got years and years and years removed, and Primus have been there, and other bands influenced by Primus have been here, and other alternative metal and bands of the like. Those bands have now all existed for 30 years or whatever. But when you listen to Frizzle Fry, it's like they were breaking ground that I don't think anybody knew could be broken. I feel like it's like if there was a big ass slab of concrete, they were way over in a corner that people were gonna we'll get to that one later. And they're like, no, we're going to this one right now. And and so it's like a sound that is beyond what anyone else had been doing, but I don't think anyone had these particular ideas to do this. And it's still such an exciting album to listen to, all the way through. And sure, they would refine their songwriting and production values would increase and get better. But man, there's an energy to this album that, and I get why this album is unique in a certain way, because I understand that if you don't want to be lumped in with metal bands, eventually your sound is going to move away from being heavy. I understand that. But to somebody like me, like, that's what made me love Primus in the beginning, was the fact that they were so odd and had a sound that I couldn't compare to anything else. But there was elements that I feel like this is for me, even though, like, I'm also, going and listening to, when I got into them, I guess I was already into Faith No More and stuff like that. So I was already, I already heard stuff like that, but I was also perfectly fine listening to Motley Crue, or, you think Guns N' Roses and things like that. But just the fact that this somehow had something in it that spoke to me, like, yeah, like, this isn't, it seems weird, but it also seems like maybe my kind of weird. Like, like, I feel like I fit in with this somehow. And
there's a generous amount. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there is a generous amount of double kick on Frizzle Fry. Like, there are a lot of moments rhythmically where it is like, these guys have been listening to some thrash, and
or we're in a thrash band.
We're in a thrash band. Yeah. But as you were saying, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I feel like if they had started off, if Primus had started off being the kind of band that made like Green Naugahyde, I don't know if I would have connected with them the way that I did. So that's why it's important to me, the early stuff and how they have that heavy edge, because that's where I felt like I was part of the ride and coming along with them. And then, of course, because I was already a fan, then wherever they went, I was, at this point, now that I know their entire discography well, I've heard, their more recent albums a couple times, except for the Chocolate Factory. I only gave that one listen, but to each their own if you're into that. But I'm now it's safe to say, like, I'm just a Primus fan. Like, whatever they do, I'm kind of along for the ride, because it's at least enjoyable and still like no other fucking band. But Frizzle Fry is my number 2, because it's just, I love the raw energy of it. But song wise, they would top themselves, in my opinion, and in yours too, because we have a joint number 1. We matched up almost all the way through this episode. But we end up at the, with number 1 right next to each other with our number 1. So let's take it away.
Nice. So my number 1 is Sailing the Seas of Cheese. And it is unfuckwithable.
Agreed.
Yeah. Right out of the gate, you get Seas of Cheese, this like fun little poem to kick it off. Mm-hmm. And then Here Come the Bastards. Like, here they come. Here come the bastards I heard it from. So cool to have such a catchy song in like 5/4 time. Like, that's a fun time signature to fuck around with. For those out there who don't know what a time signature does, that's what you are counting to in the song. So as opposed to a 1, 2, 3, 4, you're doing a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So it's a really odd thing stylistically to choose, but it
most
works.
Most of the time for your average music listener, if a band is doing it right, sometimes you don't even notice that there's an odd time signature. It's just how the song goes. And Primus is one of those bands that can do an odd time signature, and you're just like, oh no, it seems perfectly normal what they're doing in their abnormal kind of way.
Oh man, and then right after that you get Sergeant Baker, which is one of my favorite like top 5 Primus songs. Mm-hmm. Like the riffs with the right did it, left did it, right did it, left did it, right. Yeah. American Life, super cool bass line in that one. Jerry was a race car driver. I remember going to college with a guy called Rowan, and he was a big Les Claypool guy when it came to his bass playing. And he was absolutely insanely good at his instrument, crazy good player. But I remember jamming this song with him back in the day, and it's just such a fun song to play, let alone listen to.
Yeah.
And I go ballistic to this day when I hear that that breakdown where it's just like go. And
that's a good example of a Les Claypool riff where I'm not sure what he's playing there. Like I have an idea that it goes from lower to higher, but even in the higher part, like what exactly is happening there? It's so much on this album has that. It has like riffs. I know you already went over American Life, but the bass line in that, like, what is he playing? Like, that's the only way to describe it. It's a jumble of notes that all work together in some sort of really weird way, and it's great. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that.
Like, oh man, 11 named after its wild time signature, like. That's another one we're saying. Yeah. Like, this album is genius because every song, like, this is why this album sits at the top, because it introduces a bit more weirdness. They're a little bit more confident, not relying too hard on the heaviness while it is still there. But god damn, like, it's a luck.
Once again, another one of those fucking bass lines.
Granddad's little ditty, like a fun little interlude of Granddad singing in the shower. Like, only they can get away with it. Then Tommy the Cat, crazy complex song. The fact that he does those crazy fast vocals over the top proves that Les Claypool has alien DNA, and were it not for such a great disguise, he would be at Area 51 right now. Oh man, Southington Waltz is a crazy avant-garde instrumental. Those damn blue collar tweakers, god damn it. Thumping grooves in this one, very dynamic song.
Yeah.
Fish On, Fisherman Chronicles Chapter 2, is a sequel to John the Fisherman, takes you on this wild ride. And then finally you get Los Bastardos. And Primus like to end most of their albums with a callback to how it opened. And this is just that, an extremely crazy variation on what they'd established with Here Come the Bastards. But god damn, dude, like, when I really objectively looked at these top three, I thought subjectively it could be any of them, but this one has such a confidence and hit factor to every song that like even the songs I like less are still insanely memorable. So with that, I couldn't not put it at the top.
Agreed.
So,
also, I mean, obviously, also my number one. I'm gonna start at the end where you left off, though, because once again, just like me pointing out Hamburger Train, there are samples in the song Los Bastardos.
Oh, you got that ass voice again. I'm sorry, it's doing the fuzzy thing.
So what I was saying, going from the end where you left off with Los Bastardos, because I was pointing out, like, the sample from Hamburger Train, but there are also samples in Los Bastardos. And it was a big deal for me at the time because the samples, like, you hear, like, you just called me a bastard, didn't you? And those are from the show The Young Ones. One of the best UK comedies ever made, in my opinion. And I remember, like, I already loved this album the first time I heard it. And then when I heard those, because I was really big on British comedy, especially that show. And just hearing those, I'm all like, yeah, these dudes are like, they're perfect.
I'm sold.
They're even into The Young Ones. But so yeah, I think we talked about it last time where I was, talking about I couldn't remember if I got into them through Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey or not, and I still don't remember. But whatever happened, I ended up getting this album, and I loved it from the first time I listened to it, and it's never gone away. It's one of my favorite albums of the 90s. And
yeah,
you said you kept saying the word confidence, and that's, you get that. Like there's that second album thing of like there's still a lot of ambition, but now there's a lot of confidence, and you really hear it through Primus in this album.
It's Ride the Lightning syndrome.
Yeah, albums like Ride the Lightning. But I really do think that when it comes to just a collection of songs, this is Primus's most solid grouping of songs. Where, like you said, even the songs that are not your favorites are still fucking bangers in their own right. And still has a little bit of the early raw edge, but you can already hear clearly they're headed in other directions, and they would continue to go in those directions with their next couple albums. But the interesting thing about a band like Primus, and I can't really speak for everybody, but I can speak to my experience as a young person in 91, 92. So the thing that was so great is that, Sailing the Seas of Cheese was on a major record label, and I said this already, like I listened to all kinds of different music. I wasn't a weird kid. Like I wasn't the kind of person that only listened to weird music. I listened to shit that was on the radio all the way to really heavy stuff that I was discovering at the time. But the fact that Primus was a band that came out, and to me, nothing about it seemed weird or out of place. Like, I think some people could listen to Primus and go, what are they doing? Or why do they make this kind of music? But for some reason, my headspace at the time, they came across as just another cool band that just happened to have their own sound. Like there was no part of it. And I don't know if that has to do with being a young person in the early 90s or how that all works. But if I think about what they're doing, if I take a step back and listen to, like you said, what the bass plays, what the guitars are doing, what the drums do, it shouldn't work. And in theory, if you wrote it down on paper, here's what they're doing, it would be like, what the fuck is this band? But altogether, like it didn't come across that way. It was just like, this band sounds like this and they fucking kick ass. There was nothing about it that like made me think this is unusual. It was just fucking great. And it's an interesting, my experience with this album, like, 30, it's been 30 years now since this album came out. And it's aged amazingly well. And so I don't have a lot to add from what you said, because you kind of nailed it with a lot of the things you said, because it's not the best produced Primus album. There's a few times where I think I know this is probably sacrilegious when I'm talking about Primus, but the bass guitar is a little too loud on a few tracks, where like it overpowers the guitar a bit too much. And I'm like, I'd like to hear some of that in there. But that's like I said, when you get to Pork Soda, there's none of that. I think in Pork Soda, they everything I think lives in right. It lives in the right spaces. But that doesn't matter for Seas of Cheese, because just the types of the songs are just so good and never get old. Like a song from this randomly coming up on shuffle, it's never going to get skipped. And it ended up also being my number one, because it's one of my favorite albums of the 90s, and it's just a fucking banger. And so there we go. That is our Primus ranking. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, we did it. I don't know if there's. I'm assuming there's still a lag in my shit.
I timed it. We're good.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Okay. We're always a little bit off, because we're so far away from each other. I don't know how many miles it is, but it's thousands of miles, right?
It's a fair chunk. It's a fair old trek.
Yeah, I could look it up and find out if I wanted to walk and swim there, how far would it be? It would take a long time.
Can we find out now?
Hold on. So let's hold on. I'll pull up my maps. Okay, I have no fucking. I don't know how to do this.
Okay, I'm just gonna Google how far away. How far is it from Cornwall to Texas? Yep, 4,752 miles. Wow.
Wait, how much? So how much did it tell you?
I
never mind.
Googled it.
Never mind. Mine was significantly less because apparently there is also a Cornwall in Canada. So that's an easier trek apparently. But yeah. So that's how far we are away from each other.
Damn. Isn't
the
it
internet
crazy
knows this.
to think of what, yeah, the internet is a crazy thing. But
you know what? But due to the advancements in technology and all the wonderful things that we have today, we're able to do this podcast. And
hell yeah.
I mean, honestly, like if you had told me this back when I was a kid, I'd be like, that's like Star Trek shit right there. I mean, we're gonna get to see each other and talk to each other from a different country. That's insane. Anyway, so yeah, peanut butter platypus. To those of you who made it through this episode, because this has been an interesting episode. If you're just listening to the podcast version, I'm assuming that you don't even know because there's no visuals and editing is usually pretty seamless. But on the video side of things and the YouTube side of things, we had an odd beginning with no video, and then we had a couple cuts. I could probably do it in kind of a way where it's pretty interesting, maybe. I don't know. But
weird music, weird episode.
We're not perfect all the time, folks, but we did get through Primus in 2 exciting episodes. Hopefully everyone enjoyed this. And as usual, comment in the YouTube comments and what are your top 5 Primus albums. But I would say, yes, if you're brand new to Primus, go to Pork Soda first. I mean, Seas of Cheese is an amazing album, but I really do think that getting to know Primus, you get to know him pretty quick on Pork Soda. So yeah, any parting words for the ladies and gentlemen out in the audience before we get out of here?
Oh, fuck. I had it on the tip of my tongue. That shit. When the going gets tough and the stomach acids flow, whirlwind of conformity is nipping at your nose. Bring it to your knees.
You lost it right there.
Come sail the seas of cheese. I had most of it.
It was beautiful. All right. Well, then that wraps it up for this episode of Cranked and Ranked. Thank you for joining us on Cranked and Ranked. And next week we will be back. Next week we'll be back next week with another band discography. Yeah, looking forward to this one too. But yeah, I mean, I can't say thank you to everyone out there enough for continuing to listen to and watch my stuff, our stuff. Just so you know, for people that are missing Eddie Sparxx, like he is working on something big.
I'm working on a big one.
That's what she said.
Possibly 3. Hey.
Cool. So yeah, so that's it. That's all we got. I'm gonna let you guys get back to your life because you've spent enough time with us. But yeah, we'll see you back again in a week. Until then, old head saying thank you and good night, and as usual, throwing it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
Later, dude.